Hello, everybody. I have David here from Hyland Software with me today to talk about how things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA, and all of those fun buzzwords fit into Hyland Software's platforms. So before we get started, though, David, would you mind giving everybody a quick introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Emma. My name is David Luzier. I'm the Vice President of Content Services Engineering here at Hyland Software. An easy way to put that is I'm responsible for all of the R&D aspects at Hyland for everything except for healthcare. I came to the company back in 2017 through the Perceptive acquisition. And prior to that, I was the CTO at Brainware. So I've been in the industry for coming up on 25 years, actually next month, which makes me feel really old. But yeah, hard to believe it's been 25 years. And Emma, I want to thank you very much for asking me to be a part of this because I actually shaved today and I was starting to look a little bit like Grizzly Adams. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Given an opportunity to come back out into the world a little bit. Well, I appreciate you joining me. So to get us started, kind of going back to that little introduction that I did, I want to just talk a little bit about in the world of digital transformation, there are kind of these buzzwords and acronyms that don't necessarily mean a whole lot to the average business user. So when I say that, I mean things like artificial intelligence or AI, RPA, machine learning, natural language processing. How do those technologies support what Hyland Software is doing, and how are you guys using those in the platform today?
Emma, I couldn't agree with you more. There are a lot of buzzwords out there, but it's really trying to understand how they apply to specific use cases. So maybe start with artificial intelligence because machine learning really kind of comes about through AI. But artificial intelligence, I mean, you can think of it as a collection of advanced technologies that allow machines to sense, comprehend, act, and actually learn based on the data that it's processing. You know, so you can think of AI technologies, and you know this, that they're deployed for solutions that require decision making, where you're trying to automate processes. Never going to automate them 100%, but try and automate as much of those as possible. But when you break down AI, you have two types. One is applied, you know, where it's applied to a specific area. It's already kind of a pre-built knowledge AI engine. You know, so think of things like self-driving cars or something along the lines of, trade, auto doing trades of stocks and things of that nature. And then the second type is more generalized, where really in theory, it can handle any task whatsoever. So, you know, machine learning is really a subcomponent of AI, and that's where it comes into this generalized methodology or concept. So think of it in the document processing world, and this is how it lies within the Brainware product, Brainware by Hyland, is let's say you have a backfile conversion or a bunch of documents coming into an organization, and instead of people manually sorting them based on content, you want the system to automatically do that. Well, look at the way that people would do this today if they were doing this manually. Let's say we have 5 different document types. And so how would you go about training a brand new employee that had no idea what these different document types were? And I always try and explain it there. What you would do is you would set up 5 system in trays and maybe put 5, 10 examples of each document type in each of those trays. And what this person's going to use or look at that as to learn is really start to read and understand the similarities of the samples you put in the first tray, as well as in each tray, but also start to read and understand the differences between each of those trays. So the human mind is able to generalize, so it doesn't have to see every single variation of those particular document types, but it can generalize. So when a new influx of documents are coming in, rather than it has to look exactly like this, the human brain can generalize and say, well, it looks a lot like this, and so I'm going to put it in this in tray. It's the same concept with machine learning. that when we talk about machine learning, especially within the Brainware application, we tie it to the human brain because it's able to generalize. It doesn't have to look exactly the same. It doesn't have to have all of the same words, but it, just like a human brain can, the Brainware engines and algorithms underneath for that classification can generalize as well. And then, that also comes into extraction as well. So if you now want to take that high volume document processing where you're not only sorting documents, but you want to extract data from those documents to feed into an ECM or a downstream ERP, whatever it may be, again, going back to the human example, you're going to highlight a few examples for a brand new employee that doesn't understand anything about these documents. These are the fields we want you to index into this back-end system. And what they start doing is reading and understanding the general content, the contextual elements that is around the data, but they also start to understand format. What does it typically look like? How long is it a string? How long if it's a numerical field? They start to pick up on those things. So no matter if that information moves around on a document, again, the brain is able to generalize and being able to lift that information off. So it's the same concept when we're talking about using technology and being able to generalize and automate as much of that manual document classification or sorting and that indexing aspect. But hopefully that helps. But yes, there are a lot of buzzwords out there, and I think it's important to really understand the different types of AI and how machine learning ties into that. Because as I mentioned earlier, it really is a subcomponent of AI.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it may have actually been you, David, that shared with me when I was first kind of learning all of this was the idea that Brainware is named what it is because it uses those types of contextual tools that the human brain uses to figure out what's on the page and help that processing.
That's correct.
So going off of this idea of these advanced technologies being a part of the platform and Hyland solutions as a whole, from the research and development side, can you give us a little sneak peek into kind of what you're most excited for that's going to be coming down the line for Hyland?
Sure. I mean, taking those same concepts, there's a couple of things. So I could talk about that for quite a while, but one that I would talk about with just in that machine learning aspect, think of applying that into other areas, but beyond just the Brainware technology for classification and indexing of information. Think about user-driven workflow actions, where it's manually driven to kick off a workflow process based on documents and metadata, whatever it may be. Think of the same concept, using those same engines to look at what people are doing with that. What's in that document? What is in some of the metadata? What decisions are those individuals making so that you can go from a user-driven workflow to a system-assisted workflow. And then once enough knowledge is there, you could get to a point where you could do system-automated workflow. So using that technology and those concepts with the AI and the machine learning in other areas of the business, not just in the capture area. The other thing that I'm really excited about and in the future is the fact of really modernizing our Brainware or our capture technology as a whole and moving us into the cloud as a pure SaaS offering. So starting to take the best of all of the capture components that we have within Hyland, where they had a couple of already like AnyDoc or Advanced Capture and Brainware, and each of them have their strengths, and decoupling these different components that come out of each of these capture technologies as a collection of microservices, pulling them together, making it a true multi-tenant capture application that can run in the cloud and have the best of all of these capture technologies, whether you're looking at forms, semi-structured or completely unstructured document processing. And when we move into the cloud, and we are launching the first phase of this or later this year, it's called Hyland Experience Capture or HXC. You have the advantages of handling those peak volumes of coming in and scaling up and scaling down the services needed to deal with the volumes that are coming in. So scaling from the SMB side to the very large enterprise organizations that are processing millions upon millions of pages per day. So those are the two areas I'm most excited about, and you'll see coming out later this year.
Okay, and then I'm gonna do a bonus question now too. Talking about Brainware and the approach that it takes with kind of that context and using these tools, how does that approach differ than maybe some other optical character recognition tools that are on the market today?
Yeah, I think, you'll hear different terminologies out in the marketplace where they'll talk about the use of definitions or thumbprints or fingerprints. There are all these fancy terms out there. And the reality is what they're doing is they're creating templates. And, so the problem is anytime there's a slight variation of a template, it's going to fail. I always equate it to a similar in the RPA world. RPA is specific for handling, very unique tasks, but when it runs into an exception, it's going to struggle. So that's where you need that machine learning, that generalization. Things can move, things can shift around. It doesn't have to be trained on everything that it could possibly see. It's the same concept there, where adding in machine learning into RPA adds a big benefit. But that's where it's really different. And it's not just the template versus non-templated approach. The other area I would say that Brainware is really different is it's well beyond a kind of a scrape the page approach where you're just extracting data off of a document. We're off, in some of our solutions like the Brainware for invoices, we're trying to validate as much of that information, not just to validate information that's on the document itself and minimize those human touch points on the data entry aspect, but we're trying to minimize those touch points downstream in the workflow to try and get from scan to post to that ERP without any of those, human interventions, whether it's a data entry aspect or a workflow, and where it's maybe a more expensive AP clerk working on those types of activities. And so we take a very different approach, where we're not just scraping the page, we're also validating that information, whether it's internal validations, external lookups and validating that information, and then also getting smarter as you go by using what we call an automated learning engine to basically watch what the keyers are doing, and the system will continue to get smarter over time, especially with some of these solutions that we have packaged and put out, which I would kind of go back to our AI discussion earlier, is maybe more of the applied scenario where we've packaged up specific solutions where it's geared towards a specific solution or document type set.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this. And for anybody that has further questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or David, and we'd be happy to help point you in the right direction. So have a great day, everybody.